Hello, good morning. I've been hearing some people say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm the guy who which is which. Okay, my name is Joseph Edgar once again, Rants, and I have the immense privilege, massive privilege of having one of the biggest ever Nigerians on the couch today, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, and he's an elder statesman, a distinguished career diplomat, and a massive historian. But Chief, we always have a problem. That's your titles, your honors, GCON, GCVO, CFR. I got it now, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. These are the ones I use. I have many others.
Wow. I'm sure from all over the world. So which one would you say is your most cherished?
Well, the Nigerian GCON, of course.
You got that last year.
I got that last year. And before that, the highest honor I had was the Trinidad Cross,
Okay.
which is the highest national honor of Trinidad and Tobago. And I also have the highest national honor of South African Republic, the distinguished companion of Oliver Tambo. And then GCVO, which is the highest knighthood in the Royal Victorian Order, which was conferred on me by the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And of course, CFR, the Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which I had as far back as 2003, having in 1980 the Commander of the Order of the Niger from President Shagari. But of course, once you have GCON, you will no longer use CON.
Yeah, I heard.
As it's a higher order.
I heard. Yeah, I heard. So, Chief, I've had the privilege of sitting down with you on different occasions, and I've heard so many beautiful stories, and that's why we're even here. So I don't even know which of the stories we'll start with now. Okay, the Clark and Buthelezi story.
Yes, I would say that perhaps the pinnacle of my career was the role I played in the transition of South Africa from apartheid regime to democracy. And in the course of that, I was very much involved in the negotiations that President F.W. de Klerk, the last white apartheid president of South Africa, had initiated when in February 1990 he had released Nelson Mandela from 27 years in prison. And I was present when he declared that he wanted to negotiate with the anti-apartheid movements in South Africa. And so when the negotiations started, they started actually on December 1, 1991. The negotiations ran into trouble because some ANC stalwarts were massacred in a place called Boybaton, massacred by the apartheid regime forces. And ANC and the others involved threatened to pull out of the negotiations. So I rushed on to South Africa. I had meetings with Mr. Nelson Mandela, with F.W. de Klerk, with Clarence Makwetu, who was the leader of the PAC, and with General Constant Viljoen, who was the leader of the Afrikaner Party. And after meetings with them, I prepared an accord which I wanted them to sign. And the leader of the IFP in Carter Freedom Party, which was Chief Data Buthelezi, could not be reached, while I had obtained the signatures of the other four leaders. And so I wanted, nobody could find him. My staff went to Lundi, the capital of KwaZulu-Natal, where he stayed, and they said they didn't know where he was. So I went to F.W. de Klerk, the president, and I said, well, I could not believe that your security agents would not know where Buthelezi was. And F.W. de Klerk smiled and told me that Buthelezi was at Holiday Inn in Pretoria under the name of Mr. Rogers.
Beautiful.
So I decided to call Buthelezi myself. I dialed the Holiday Inn and asked to speak to Mr. Rogers, and I was put on to Mr. Rogers. And he answered the call. I recognized his voice instantly. And but I wanted to be sure it was he. I said, Mr. Rogers? He said, yes. I said, well, gotcha, this is your brother Chief here. And he shouted and said, how did you get where I was? And I said, well, in my position, you can be sure that I will find out where you were. And I said I was coming to see him straight away.
Yes.
And I went straight away to see him. And it turned out to be the only meeting where he did not have a prepared statement to read to me. And I got him to sign the memorandum.
Wow.
And this was how the talks were restored.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So you know, one of the reasons why I told Touch why I wanted to have this session. Touch is actually the nickname that we'll call the lady that's our executive producer. Is because the stories are so beautiful, they're so exciting, and that I didn't want to just have those stories alone. I wanted to share it with the rest of the world. Oh yeah, so tell me about the Mandela.
Yes.
Your first meeting with Mandela. Was he in prison, Abi?
Yes.
Brilliant.
I first met Mandela
Yes.
at Polsmoor Prison.
Brilliant.
In
Tosh,
South
are you listening?
Africa.
Are you listening?
Yes, because this was in 1986. I led the secretariat team that went with the Commonwealth Eminent Persons Group, which had two co-chairmen. The group had two co-chairmen. General Obasanjo was a co-chairman with Malcolm Fraser, who had been Prime Minister of Australia for 7.5 years, who incidentally, when I competed for the Secretary Generalship, was my competitor. And we went to see Nelson Mandela in prison. And when we got there, we saw the apartheid minister for prisons, Kobi Kosir was his name, and he had his team. He said he would be present at the meeting. And I said to him, well, we were there for a private conversation with Mr. Nelson Mandela, and you will be there only if he agrees that you and your team would be there. So I went with my two co-chairmen, General Obasanjo and Mr. Malcolm Fraser, first into the room where Nelson Mandela was, and I told him that Minister Kobi Coetzee was outside with his team, wanted to be present in our conversations with you. And Nelson Mandela said, yes, let him and his team be there. There's nothing I would tell you that I have not told them and will not tell them. So that was how we got the meeting going. And then, of course, my real meeting with Nelson Mandela was one-to-one meeting was in May 1990 at Abuja, when the Commonwealth 8 foreign ministers who were charged with trying to deal with apartheid met in Abuja. And I told Nelson Mandela that I would be assuming office as Secretary General on the 1st of July. And I wanted my first official dinner to be in his honor, in honor of him and Winnie Mandela. And he said, oh, he would be honored and be delighted. And as a result, at that dinner, I assumed office. 1st of July was a Sunday, so I went to my office on the 2nd of July. And on the 5th of July, my first week, I had a dinner party. My wife and I hosted a dinner party. I had asked Nelson Mandela whom he would like me to invite to the dinner. And he said he would like representatives of the companies that were doing business in South Africa. So as a result, we had 50 guests at the dinner. Only 8 were representatives of governments, Commonwealth governments. 2 members of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, Geoffrey Howe, the Foreign Secretary, and William Waldegrave, who was Internal Minister, and 6 High Commissioners of Nigeria, Australia, Canada, Jamaica, India, and I can't remember the 6th one, but 6 High Commissioners and 2 British Cabinet Ministers. And what I did at the dinner was that the tables, we sat 10 per table, and I agreed with Nelson Mandela that after each course of the dinner, he would move from his table to another table because everybody wanted to talk with him. And it was a very successful dinner. And that sealed my friendship with Nelson Mandela because we became personal friends when in 1994 he was sworn in as the first democratically elected president of South Africa. My wife and I were there in Pretoria, the swearing in. It was a very emotional occasion because I remember clearly that when Nelson Mandela was taking the oath, a number of the audience, including my wife, tears were rolling down their eyes because this was a very emotionally charged occasion. And subsequently, Nelson Mandela wrote the foreword to my biography, written by a Canadian author, and my memoirs. He wrote the foreword. And of course, when he died in 2013, I was one of the 3 guests from Nigeria that the South African government invited to his funeral. So in terms of my role in the transition of South Africa from apartheid to democracy, it was not only that memorandum that I got them to sign to restore the talks after the massacre in Boipatong, but also I had sent a team of Commonwealth police officers, men and women, to go to South Africa during the last days of apartheid and help the South African police learn the techniques of community policing, because before that, all they were doing was to deal with anti-apartheid protesters. They were not schooled in community policing. I sent a team of 24 Commonwealth police officers, including one from Nigeria, one IG from Nigeria, who subsequently became IG. Etimenyang was one of them,
Wow.
and helped South Africa And when the elections were coming on in early 94, I sent a team of Commonwealth electoral experts to help work with the South African Electoral Commission. And for the elections itself, I sent a very powerful team of 72 headed by the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley. And this was a contribution that helped South Africa transit from apartheid to democracy.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Wow. Let's talk about GCON. You met him during the Civil War.
Well, before the Civil War, I would say the Nigerian Civil War, I was then Assistant Director of Political Affairs Division in the Commonwealth Secretariat. And the first Commonwealth Secretary General, Arnold Smith, tried to broker peace between the federal government and Biafra. And the two delegations from Lagos and from Umuahia, from Lagos, delegation sent by head of state then, General GCON, and delegation sent from Umuahia by Emeka Ojukwu. They talked, and Arnold Smith gave them a proposal for settling the war. And while they went back to their capitals to study the proposal, one member of the Biafran delegation, who was very close to Emeka Ojukwu, told me that there was no way Emeka Ojukwu would accept that proposal. So I said, well, in that case, I would like to go and talk to him.
That's Ojukwu now.
Ojukwu, yes.
You're not scared?
Well, when I told Arnold Smith, the Secretary General,
Yes.
that I wanted to go to Biafra to see Ojukwu, and Arnold Smith said, no, that's very dangerous. But I insisted. I said, well, my advice to you is not to go, but if you really feel you must go, you can. I remember that my second son was ill in hospital, and I broke the news. I told my wife that I was going to go to Biafra to see Emeka Ojukwu. And my wife said, with Obi in this state? I said, well, if anything happens to him, I would regard that as one of the casualties of this
Civil War.
And I had to go first to Holland to catch one of the Mercy flights from Amsterdam. We flew to Sao Tome, and from Sao Tome to Umuahia, to Uli Airport.
Uli, yeah.
From where we landed at Uli Airport. It was a most hair-raising flight because when we were coming into Nigeria and coming to Uli, the plane, all the lights were switched off. And when we got to Uli Airport, the Uli Airport was reinforced motorway. When we got there, we landed at midnight and the landing lights of the runway were switched on just as we were about to land, and we landed. And I went to see Ojukwu and told him about the proposal.
So prior to this, had you met him before?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
I had met him before.
You met his father?
It was my friend. His father was my father's friend.
Oh, brilliant.
And we were friends. I mean, when he joined the army, when he returned from Oxford, his first was a civil servant. an administrator, and then eventually joined the army. And I had occasional contacts with him. And I remember that, as I recorded in my memoir, after my conversation with him while I was talking, before I started my conversation, his wife, Njide, brought some sandwiches for two of us. And I said to the wife, I said, Njide, before you go, I'd like to you to know that I'm going to tell Emeka things that he might not want to hear. And under the pressure he is, I would not be surprised if he pulls his pistol and shoots me. All I want you, Njide, to do is to tell Bumi, your friend, that's
a wife, yeah.
how I died.
Oh,
And Njide said, oh, well, Emeka was the first who said, well, Emeka, you can be very dramatic. And Njide said, well, there's nothing my two Emekas cannot sort out, and left us.
yes.
And of course, I talked to Emeka Juku about the proposal, and he said no, he would not accept, as I had been advised. He said no. And I argued with him, and in the end he said, well, look, Emeka, you're saying it. Since you are saying it, you can tell Arnold Smith to go ahead, but I do not accept what he says. But he can go ahead. If Gowan accepts it, we will see. That was when I left Biafra. 2 days later, I was on a Mercy flight lifting children in an aeroplane that brought in arms to Biafra, and lifting children to Gabon. And these were children. We had no seats in the aircraft. There were mats, and the children were all mats, and I also was on the mat. And we flew to Gabon, Libreville, and from Libreville I found my way back to London.
So that's a Joko now. So let's say the Gowon part. So you met Gowon eventually.
Yes. After the war, in April 1972, the Secretary General sent me as his special envoy to West African Commonwealth heads of state to plead for their agreement to allow Bangladesh, which had just broken away from Pakistan. Bangladesh used to be East Pakistan, and it broke away after a very intensive war between India and Pakistan. Bangladesh wanted to join the Commonwealth, and that would confer instant recognition on Bangladesh by the 54 members of the Commonwealth. And I started my West African trip with Gambia. I saw the President, Dawda Jawara, persuaded him. He said he had no objection. I went to Sierra Leone. I went to Ghana. And then I came last to Nigeria. And when I arrived in Nigeria, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs reaction was that I should deliver my message to the foreign minister, not the head of state. And the foreign minister then was Dr. Koya Ripo. And I said I was special envoy of the Secretary General to heads of state. And I had seen the other three. And if they would not allow me to see the Nigerian head of state, I would return to London. I spoke with my Secretary General, who supported that view. But eventually, but Gowan said he wanted to see me. So I met with Gowan, and I told Gowan that his policy, declared policy of no victor, no vanquished, was an extraordinarily positive, visionary policy, and that I was sure that everybody welcomed that and supported that. And that was the beginning of my personal friendship with
Go on.
Gowan, which has lasted till today.
Brilliant. So, Chief, Queen Elizabeth, we hear you're a very close friend. Just let us have one experience, one
Well,
exciting experience.
my first real meeting with Her Majesty the Queen was in 1974. I was then the director of the Political Affairs Division at the Commonwealth Secretariat. And the Secretary General had a meeting of all the cabinet secretaries in the Commonwealth countries. And the Queen hosted a reception for them. And when I went to the reception, the then Private Secretary to Her Majesty, Philip Moore, said to me that Her Majesty would be talking to groups of cabinet secretaries, and we've been advised that you're probably the only person who could identify their countries, and so the Queen would like you to be with her as she moves about and identify the people she was going to talk to. And I did that. And I did that. And I remember at the end of the reception, when usually the Queen would go in one direction and Prince Philip would go in another direction, and at the end of the function, both of them would meet. So I was with the Queen, identifying the groups of cabinet secretaries as she went along. And at the end, when they met, Prince Philip asked her, with me there, was he able to identify everyone? And Her Majesty said, yes, he did. And Prince Philip said, oh, you're a walking compendium there. And when I retired from being the Secretary General, the Queen appointed me her trustee on the board of the British Museum. The British Museum trustees are appointed. The Prime Minister of Britain appoints 15. The Queen appoints 1.
Wow.
And then the 16 members of the board would appoint 4 representatives from British institutions. And when I retired, to my huge surprise, the private secretary called me and said that Her Majesty wanted to see me. And I went, and her cousin, the Duke of Gloucester, who came here for our 50th anniversary, independence anniversary, had been her trustee on the board of the British Museum, and he was completing his 80 years, and the Queen was to appoint his successor. And to my great surprise, Her Majesty said, well, Chief, I'd like you to be my trustee on the British Museum board. And so I was her trustee, In the same way, as shortly after that, I succeeded Prince Philip as the international president of WWF. So but before I left office, the Queen had conferred on me the GCVO order, which is the highest knighthood in the Royal Victorian Order. And of British titles, that's one in the gift of the Queen, of the monarch.
Yeah.
And so I was closely associated with Buckingham Palace. And even after my retirement, when I went to London until she died, I was given the privilege of being invited to her garden parties.
So basically, Chief, you've never queued for visa before. You've never queued for visa before. I've now been to embassy to queue to get visa.
Get visa to UK?
Yes.
No. No. I have a permanent live visa to UK.
And which other country?
Uh,
And which other country?
Well, I think in terms of Commonwealth countries, I've never had problem with visa.
Yeah, obviously.
But it's only UK and Trinidad and Tobago that I have life visas. But the others, whenever I, like South Africa or India, all I do is to call the High Commissioner and send my passport, and the visa is given to me without requiring my presence in the High Commission, yes.
Okay, so at the tail end of this interview, I would obviously ask you about your take on Nigeria of today. We can avoid that. But you've had experiences with IBB. With IBB, Babangida.
Yes.
Okay, can I just have one?
Well, I have...
An Abacha.
Yes, I have related to all Nigerian heads of states.
Yes.
Starting with Shagari, in terms of democratically elected heads of state. But I have also had a meeting in 1966, April, with General Ronsi. But in recent times, I had meetings with IBB when he was head of state of Nigeria. And I remember one incident when IBB was going to host Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who visited Nigeria. And there was a question of the president's banquet, whether wine would be served, because the usual thing was not to serve wine, alcohol. But I went to IBB and I said, well, Mr. President, Margaret Thatcher is a British Prime Minister, and a banquet for her should have wine. And it doesn't really matter that Nigeria is not a Muslim country, and it should. And IBB agreed. So at the banquet, wine was served. Well, when I saw IBB a number of times when he was head of state, and when he annulled the election in 1992, I think it was. Um, I let him know that I did not approve of the annulment of the election, but that's why it passed. And then subsequently, I had relations with Abacha.
Abacha.
And
Did you tell him to remove his glasses at your meeting?
yes, he used his dark glasses, but occasionally took it out when I was.
Were his eyes red?
with
Were his eyes
with
red?
I wouldn't say his eyes were red. His eyes were normal. His eyes were normal. And one of his ministers said to me that I was probably the only person whom Abacha never kept waiting to see him. Kept his appointment. If he said 11 o'clock,
It's 11 o'clock.
when I get there, he will see me at 11. And I remember that 3 weeks after MKO Abiola was detained, and the newspapers, both in Britain and in Nigeria, were writing that MKO Abiola was being tortured in prison and was not well. I decided to come to Nigeria to see Abacha.
Oh, you're still Commonwealth Secretary General?
I was Commonwealth Secretary General, and I went to see him. I had a good meeting, but before my meeting, I usually met with him one-to-one. But for that meeting, I requested the Foreign Minister, Babagana Kingibe, to be present. And he was there. And after talking, I said to Abacha that I wanted to see MKO Abiola in prison. And Abacha's first reaction was, no, you cannot see him. He's a man charged with treason, and you cannot see him. And I said to him, well, Excellency, you must know that the world press and Nigerian press have been writing that he's been tortured and is not well. And when I leave you, the press is bound to ask me about that and whether I saw MKO Abiola. And I'll be obliged to tell them that I asked you to let me see Abiola, and you said no. And the conclusion they will draw from that is that all the press reports were true. So he paused for a while, looked at his foreign minister, and then said, yes, you will see him. And I said, he said he was going to host a dinner in my honor at 7:30 that day.
That's Abacha now.
Abacha, yes, head of state. I mean, as Secretary General, when I visited countries, the head of government would host a dinner in my honor. And he said the dinner would be 7:30, and I would see MK Abiola by 5:30. I said, fine. And I went back to Transcorp Hilton where I was staying. And at 5 o'clock, I called the foreign minister, Babagana Kingibe, to say that nobody had yet called me. And Kingibe said, well, sir, this is the security sometimes do their own thing. And I said, well, the dinner is 7:30, and I will leave the hotel about 7:15. He said, so I left the hotel, got to Asorok for 7:30, and it's precisely after I got there, I went to a room where there were many prominent Nigerians, including the then Chief Justice and the others. And Abacha came in and walked straight to me and said, "Have you seen him?" I said, "No, I have not." He, I think, was clever. He didn't want to show that he was surprised that his instruction had not been carried out. He said, "Oh, you'll see him. The dinner will have to be short then. We'll finish the dinner by 8:45 so that you can see him. You just go back to your hotel room and please don't go to see him in the long wheel Mercedes that the government provided for me." He said, "A commissioner of police will come and take you, and you ride with him and go and see Abiola." I said, "Fine." The dinner finished at 8:45. Then Abacha walked me to my car, and I left. And I got back to my hotel, waited. I didn't get any call until midnight when I was going to go to bed. I got a call from the Commissioner of Police who said that the head of state had asked them to arrange for me to see Chief Abiola, Mr. Abiola. I remember they didn't call him Chief Abiola, Mr. Abiola. And that it would take an hour, 15 minutes to bring him to Abuja. So I said, "This is midnight. An hour, 15 minutes would mean 1 a.m. I said, "I cannot keep awake until then." I said, "Why not 6 a.m.? I will see him at 6 a.m. You call me." The commissioner said, "Fine." And promptly at 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang, and it was the commissioner. And I went down with my special assistant, and a Nigerian special assistant. I had two special assistants, a British gentleman and a Nigerian gentleman. And the Nigerian accompanied me to Nigeria. So we went down, and the commissioner, I said to the commissioner, "My special assistant is coming with me." And so the commissioner was in a mufti, driving a Peugeot, and he and I sat in front, and my special assistant sat behind.
And no security.
No security.
You're not worried?
Yeah. No, I wasn't worried. I mean, I was in the company of a commissioner of police. I wasn't worried. So he drove me to a bungalow somewhere in Maitama. When we got to the bungalow, the place was littered with policemen in uniform and obvious DSS in not uniform. And there was a commissioner of police, another commissioner of police there in uniform. And the commissioner of police who was there escorted me along with the one who brought me to the bungalow, and we got through the sitting room, went to a bedroom. He didn't even knock, and he just opened the door. And there was Abiola on the bed, turning, obviously in pain. And I said, Anomi. Or he said, call me Anomi, because my wife is from Abeokuta. And the two commissioners pulled two chairs to sit. And I said to them, look, the head of state agreed that I should have a private conversation with Chief Abiola, and if you want to be here, you can only be here if Chief Abiola agrees that you should be here. And so you will leave, and I will ask him. And they had pulled the chairs for them. So they pulled chairs for me and my special assistant and pulled 2 chairs for them. So one of them, the one who brought me, said, well, Excellency, in this case, you see him for 20 minutes, and before that, he said, because Abiola had greeted me with Mayano, they thought I spoke Yoruba. And he said that the conversation must be in a language they will understand. So they left. And I asked Abiola, I told Abiola the experience we had in South Africa in 1986 with Mandela, and that I would call the commissioners of police only if he agreed. Excuse me. And Chief Abiola said to me, I have no problems with the senior police officers. It's the junior ones who've denied me my radio, who would not let me have newspapers, and so they could be there. And I asked my special assistant to go and call them back, because I had told them that the head of state had agreed that I should see Abiola, and that I have not traveled all the way from London to see him for 45 minutes, for 20 minutes. So they were there, and I had my conversation with Chief Abiola, in which I put a proposal to him for resolving the Nigerian crisis. And what impressed me about Abiola was that I had asked him to give me 10 names of Nigerians from whom I would choose 5, and I was going to ask General Abacha to nominate 5 people, and with the 10, 5 from him, 5 from the head of state, I would lock myself and my special assistant in a room to discuss how to resolve the Nigerian crisis. And what impressed me was that Abiola gave me 10 names from all over the country, from north, south, from all over the country. And when, at the end, I said, who would you want me to regard as the leader of your team? He said to me, Chief Ajashi.
Adekule Ajasin.
Ajashi, yes. And that was it. Of course, he said he accepted my proposal. I then subsequently put the proposal to General Abacha, because we agreed that after seeing Abiola, I would see
him too.
And he, of course, declined. He said, no, he would not accept my proposal. He would rather go the way of convening a constituent assembly, and so on. And my last conversation with Abacha was the day he detained Obasanjo, arrested Obasanjo. I called him to say that I've just learned that General Obasanjo has been detained, sent to prison. He said, oh, yes, that he was involved in treasonable plotting and so on. And I said to him, well, obviously, I'm not there to see your evidence, but I can tell you that sending Obasanjo to prison is a great disservice to our country, because Obasanjo was internationally respected as the first military ruler who willingly handed over power to civilians. And that if the evidence you have is that strong, surround his house with your security people, let him put him on house arrest. But the idea of sending him to prison is not good for the country. And he said to me, well, Excellency, you know I love our country and I'm prepared to die for it. And this is... and I said, Excellency, you know that I'm older than you, so I have loved the country longer than you have. And he said to me, well, Excellency, if I cannot persuade you, there's no point our continuing this conversation. And I said, that's true, no point. And that was my last conversation
With Abacha.
Before I was in Lusaka, when I saw on CNN that he had died. And I must say, within 3 hours of his successor, General Abu Salam Abubakar, General Abubakar called me. He called my office in London and was told I was in Lusaka, and he called me to invite me to come to Nigeria. And I said to him, well, this is fine, but I would suggest that you also invite my good friend, Kofi Annan, who was Secretary General of the United Nations. 2 of us would come. And he accepted the advice and invited Kofi Annan. Kofi was going to be on the dates in Geneva, and Abdul Salam Abubakar sent a presidential jet to Geneva to bring him. I came from London, British Airways, to Lagos, and he sent a presidential jet to take me from Lagos to Abuja. So I arrived in Abuja 3 hours before Kofi, and we had dinner with him, and at dinner he told Kofi and me that he would be releasing Abiola. He would be releasing Abiola. But before that, I must tell you that after Abacha had used a court-martial to sentence Obasanjo to death, I got so worried that I mobilized a number of heads of government, both African and non-African, to send messages to Abacha to plead for Obasanjo's life. And when that failed, I called President Nelson Mandela and said to him that he should please either go to Nigeria or send his deputy president, one of the two, Thabo Mbeki, to Nigeria, and that I was going to call Mugabe, the president of Zimbabwe, to 2 of them to go to Nigeria. And Mandela said yes, he would nominate Thabo Mbeki. I called Mugabe Mugabe agreed. So Mugabe and Mbeki came to
Nigeria.
Nigeria and saw Abacha. They met with Abacha for before that. Before that, Mandela had sent Thabo Mbeki. Mbeki came alone, met with Abacha, and returned to South Africa. And Mandela called me to say that Mbeki did not succeed. So I then said, in which case I would want to ask Mugabe to join Mbeki again. So Mugabe and Mbeki came and met with Abacha, and when they returned to their respective places, Mugabe called me to say that they pleaded with him and that what they succeeded in getting was that Abacha agreed to commute the death sentence to life imprisonment of 25 years. And I said to Mugabe, and what evidence did he show? He said, yes, the evidence he showed them was a video of an army officer, Colonel, I think the name,
Fadile.
Fadile or Fadile?
Fadile.
Yeah, yes. They showed him walking out of Obasanjo's bedroom. But that was all they saw. They didn't hear any conversation and so on. And I said, fine. So they succeeded in getting Abacha to commute. Life.
Okay. So, Chief, how do you compare leaders, Nigerian leaders of those years, your time, civilian elected leaders, and the ones that we've had in the last dispensation?
Well, that's not an easy question because the leaders have their strong points and their weak points.
Yes.
In terms of Joe's, I can think of knowing, working with closely. President Shehu Shagari was a leader who listened to advice.
He did?
Yes. Shehu Shagari had this great advantage that he listened to advice and was prepared to modify his own thinking in the light of advice he got. IBB was also somebody who listened to advice, but was a strong leader, a very strong leader, and Abacha, of course, was in a class by his own. Abacha was in a class by his own. Abdul Salam Abubakar also listened to advice, and probably of all the Nigerian leaders with whom I worked and associated, he was one who did not allow his own ego to dominate conversations and his policy decisions. OBJ, Obasanjo, is a strong visionary leader who, all of them, of course, loved their country. That's one thing I would say about Nigerian leaders. They all love their country, and that's an important point to make. The President Jonathan was also, he listened to advice and loved Nigeria, and probably one of the most intellectually gifted leaders we have.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
yes. So also I wouldn't put Obasanjo behind him. Obasanjo is a leader who reads his brief, masters his brief, and can see ahead. Them I worked with, and Yaradua also listened to advice, and he probably did not have as much intellectual strength as Obasanjo, but he listened to advice. So I wouldn't be able to say which of them was the best for the country.
What of Tinubu? What of your assessment? What of your assessment of Tinubu?
But I enjoyed my working with them.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever meet Mutala?
Hmm?
Mutala Mohammed. Did you ever meet him? Did you ever have a session with him?
Not really. No, not. I had
No contact.
no contact with him. I'm just thinking, but I don't remember meeting him. But at the same time, I admired his strong sense of Nigeria's independence and African dignity.
Yes.
He was very strong on that. I mean, his policy on Angola was quite remarkable. Yes, he was prepared to damn the United States government and co when he decided to recognize Angola, the Angola's independence, to support Angola's independence.
Okay, so for the younger viewers, just as we prepare to round up, what does it take to be a successful career diplomat? What are the qualities?
Well, I think you clearly will have to start with loving your country,
Okay.
because to represent your country abroad, you must love your country. And secondly, you must be interested in studying and following the affairs of your country, so as to be able to comment and explain what's happening to your country while abroad. And thirdly, you must have a flair for living abroad, representing your country in various places, And I think these are the three elements I would advise anyone who is interested in the foreign service to strive to possess.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Chief, let's talk about patriots. The patriots.
Patriots.
Yes, what's it about?
Well, the Patriots.
Patriots. I mean, Shomulu said there.
The Patriots are a group of eminent Nigerians,
Okay.
often thought of as leaders of thought, who are committed to first Nigerian unity as a political entity, second, and perhaps more importantly, having a constitution that addresses Nigeria's pluralism. Nigeria is, by every fact, a pluralistic country.
Yeah, definitely.
And pluralism is the main challenge in pluralistic countries. Those pluralistic countries that were able to address the challenge of pluralism have survived as political entities.
Yeah, true.
Those that were not able to address the pluralism have invariably disintegrated. And so the Patriots are a group pushing for these things. The founder and first chairman of the Patriots was late Chief Rotimi Williams.
Okay.
He was succeeded by Professor Ben Nwabueze,
Yeah.
and I have succeeded Professor Ben Nwabueze as the chairman of the Patriots.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Chief, let me thank you very much. So to round up, what? Because I've asked this question this because of this conversation, and you start to dodge. But let me come back again because you can't dodge. How do you see Nigeria of today, and what's the way out of wherever it is that we find ourselves today? How do you see Nigeria, and what's
In a nutshell,
Yes.
I would say that Nigeria must address its pluralism. And the only successful way it can address its pluralism is by having a truly federal constitution. We are in the sorry state that we are today because we departed from true federalist constitution to a pseudo federalist constitution, which in effect is a unitary constitution, whereby Abuja determines everything.
Yeah.
So I believe that Nigeria, at my age of 91, I can say that I knew Nigeria when Nigeria was functioning a lot better than it is functioning now. And that was because Nigeria had a truly federal constitution. The regions were developing fast in healthy competition with one another.
Yeah.
In the western region, Chief Obafemi Awolowo was developing the country. In the northern region, Sardauna of Sokoto was developing the country. In the eastern region, Dr. Michael Opara was developing the country with revenues derived from the regions. In the north, we had the groundnut pyramids and cotton and tin from the Plateau State. In the west, cocoa was financing Awolowo's projects. And in the east, palm produce was financing Dr. Bara's projects. But now, and this was even before the discovery of oil, crude oil, that is. So I believe that we have to have a truly federal constitution to be able to restore Nigeria to the development path that it used to have. I mean, when I was your age, Nigeria was respected internationally. Nigerian passport was respected internationally. The quality of education in Nigeria was respected internationally. There was no Japa, as they call it. People who went abroad, left the country, went for acquisition of education of greater skills. But now the conditions in the country encourage people to want, the young people and the professionals to want to seek greener pastures abroad. I believe that the country, unless and until it has a constitution that addresses its pluralism, we will continue to limp along.
Thank you, Chief Emeka Anyaoku. This was like eating a well-made pot of afang. Do you eat afang?
Japa.
Afang. Do you eat afang? Afang, the soup.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how come when I come to your house, give me tea, you don't give me afang?
My cook is from Akwa Ibom.
It's from Akwa Ibom.
And he gives me excellent afang.
Does he put periwinkle?
Well, periwinkles are not easily obtainable here.
Brilliant. So I want to really thank you for being part of this. And I must tell you something very quickly. You know, people like you are now a rarity in the country. And when some people heard that you're coming, you know, we now start getting a deluge of requests from other people wanting to come. Like if Chief Emeka Anyaoku can come to this mad podcast, then I want to become a big man or billionaires or sorts. I want to come at it like that. You know, but you know, you carry a rare currency. That's that of integrity. You know, that's that of high principle. Especially the kind of story you just told us now with your Senate confirmation and all of that. It's just so sad that there seems to be a dislocation between Nigerians of your type and the kinds of Nigerians that are leading us today. You know, but we do hope that with sessions like this, engagements like this, that just maybe the younger people will be inspired to begin to see things, you know, the way you saw things. Because I've seen you here mention names of very great Nigerians like Chief Williams, guys like Akintola Williams, guys who like Awo, people who were very selfless in what they did. And something you said there again, which is very remarkable, that I've always thought about, is the fact that all of our leaders, up until maybe I just got him now, came at policy decisions from the angle of the people. It may not work well, may not in the place of implementation may not work well, but you could actually see that this didn't come from a selfish point of view. So I give an example. So the Southerners didn't want independence as at that time when we were going for it because he felt the North was not ready. It wasn't because of any personal gain as Saldana himself in that decision. Everything Awo did, you get, was because he felt it was good for the West. Same with Zik, same with Okpara. Like that. As against what's happening today, you see policies that you can actually pinpoint personal interest in those policies, and that's another reason why we are where we are today. But don't let me talk too much. We've been speaking with Chief Emeka Anyaoku. We cameraman looking at that one or two. Chief Emeka Anyaoku, GCON, GCVOCFR. One of my big senior brothers, Mr. Aki Kekereko, his wife just announced the Chief Justice of the Federation, had called me 3 days earlier to say this issue always having with Chief on his titles. Do you get? So he explained everything to me. I said, oh, don't go to interview and embarrass yourself. Oh. So he explained everything to me. So we thank you very much, sir. We remain highly grateful. Even if I don't do any other podcast like this one, I'm okay. This was quite brilliant. This was rich. And it was very educative. Thank you so much, sir. Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you have a last word for us?
Well, thank you. I must say that I have enjoyed this conversation with you.
Thanks so much, sir.
As much as I always enjoy reading your pieces in Sunday editions of this day.
Thanks so much.
And all I can say is I wish you continued progress.
Did you read me yesterday?
Yes.
You did? Which was the favorite?
Huh?
Which was the favorite?
Which?
What was your favorite story yesterday?
I think the story you told, I'm trying to recollect.
So there was Tinubu,
it was Tinubu, it was
Asari Dokubo.
Asari Dokubo. I thought Asari Dokubo was very entertaining. I thought that was very entertaining.
Yes.
You talked about his looks and
Yes.
and your treatment of his threat to shoot down
The helicopter.
the helicopter. Yes, and no, it's.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.